The humid Bangkok air hung heavy over the Royal Thai Army headquarters as Colonel James Harrison, now 82, sat in the place of honor at the ceremonial hall. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting golden light across assembled dignitaries and guests whose faces he was only beginning to recognize after 4 decades. Colonel Harrison, said General Somchai Junchakul, Thailand's Deputy Defense Minister, approaching the podium with an ornate wooden box. Today we honor not just a soldier, but a guardian angel who operated in the shadows when darkness consumed our region. Jim's weathered hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his dress uniform. His steel gray hair was neatly combed, his posture still military straight despite his age, but his eyes held the distant look of someone who had seen things that couldn't be unseen. In the audience, faces watched him with an intensity that went beyond ceremony. Dr. Narachandara, now Thailand's Minister of Health, sat in the front row. His expensive suit couldn't hide the boy who had once arrived at U-Tapao Air Base wearing nothing but torn shorts and carrying a wooden toy elephant. Beside him sat engineer Sapi Kim, whose construction company had built half of Bangkok's modern skyline. 43 years ago, General Juntkul continued, when the world turns back on the children of Cambodia, one American officer decided that some orders were more important than others. Some missions were more sacred than official protocol. Jim closed his eyes briefly. He could still hear the helicopters, still smell the monsoon rain mixed with smoke and fear. He could still see the faces, so many small faces, looking up at him with eyes that had seen too much, trusted too little, but somehow still hoped. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison stood on the tarmac of U-Tapao Royal Thai Navy Airfield, watching another C-130 transport plane touch down in the pre-dawn darkness. The aircraft bore no markings except serial numbers. Officially, it didn't exist. Officially, neither did the cargo it would soon carry. It was March 15th, 1979, and the world was falling apart just across the border. The Khmer Rouge had fallen, but Vietnam's invasion of Cambodia had unleashed chaos that defied description. Refugees poured across the Thai border in numbers that overwhelmed every camp, every aid station, every attempt at organization. Colonel Harrison called Major Rick Tanaka, jogging across the wet tarmac. We've got another situation at the border. UN says they can't process the new arrivals fast enough. Food's running out, medical supplies are gone, and there are kids. Hundreds of them, some as young as 4 or 5. No parents, no families. Jim had been in Southeast Asia for 3 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. His official mission was logistics coordination, but the reality on the ground was far more devastating than any briefing had conveyed. What are our orders regarding unaccompanied minors? Jim asked. Standard protocol. Sir. Document. Processed through UN channels. Place in refugee camps until permanent solutions can be found. Jim had visited those camps. Overcrowded, understaffed, dangerous. Children disappeared. Some died from disease. Others simply vanished into chaos of human trafficking or worse. What Jim saw at the border that day changed everything. Not just the scale of human suffering, but the faces. Specifically, the face of a little girl, maybe 6 years old, sitting alone beside a Red Cross tent, holding a wooden elephant carved by someone who was probably dead. She looked up at him with eyes that should have been playful, curious, alive. Instead, they held the hollow stare of someone who had learned that adults could not be trusted, that safety was an illusion, that tomorrow might not come. That night, Jim sat in his quarters at U-Tapao, staring at a photo of his own daughter back in Ohio. Sarah was 8 years old, safe in suburban Cleveland. The contrast made his chest tight. He picked up the secure phone and called his commanding officer at PACOM headquarters in Hawaii. Sir, I need to discuss an operational possibility regarding the refugee situation. These unaccompanied minors aren't safe in the camps. If we could temporarily relocate the most vulnerable children to secure facilities in Thailand while permanent solutions are found. There was a long pause. What kind of facilities? There's a network of Thai families and institutions who've expressed willingness to provide temporary care. If we could coordinate a secure, unofficial channel. Unofficial? Sir, if through official UN channels, it'll take months. These kids don't have months. But if a small logistics operation were to develop irregularities in its transport manifests, another long pause, Colonel Harrison, sometimes the most important missions are the ones that never appear in any official record. Sometimes supply manifest might be incomplete, or a transport flight might make an unscheduled stop. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand, sir. 3 days later, Jim stood in a converted warehouse at U-Tapao that officially served as a supply storage facility. Unofficially, it had become the staging area for an operation that existed in the shadows between humanitarian aid and military logistics. All right, people, Jim addressed a small team. Let's be clear about what we're doing here. Officially, we're coordinating supply deliveries to refugee camps. Unofficially, we're saving lives. His team consisted of 6 carefully chosen personnel: Major Tanaka, who spoke fluent Thai; Captain Lisa Chun, a logistics specialist who could make paperwork disappear and reappear as needed; Sergeant Rodriguez, whose family had connections in the Thai community; Staff Sergeant Wilson, a medic; Technical Sergeant Park, who could modify transport manifests; and Corpsman Mitchell, whose gentle manner with children was matched by her fierce protective instincts. The process is simple in concept, complex in execution. Jim continued. We identify the most vulnerable, unaccompanied children at the border camps. We provide basic medical screening and documentation. We coordinate with pre-vetted Thai families and institutions who can provide temporary care. And we transport them using aircraft that are already making supply runs. What about official oversight? Captain Chen asked. The beauty of chaos is that paperwork gets lost. Children get missed in official counts. Transport manifests sometimes contain errors. As far as any official record is concerned, these children are still in the camp system. The first transport was terrifying. Jim personally accompanied 8 children, ages 4 to 12, on what appeared to be a routine supply flight. In reality, the aircraft made an unscheduled fuel stop at a small airfield where 8 Thai families waited with open arms. He watched through the aircraft window as the little girl with the wooden elephant, they'd started calling her Molly, walked hesitantly toward a middle-aged couple who knelt to her level, speaking softly in Khmer. The woman gently touched the wooden elephant, then pulled out a matching one from her bag. Molly's face broke into the first smile Jim had seen from her. One down, he whispered to himself. 449 to go. Within 6 months, what had started as a small, improvised operation had evolved into a sophisticated network that operated across 3 countries and involved dozens of people who officially knew nothing about each other. Jim's warehouse had been converted into a children's processing center. Dr. Suin Prateep, a Thai pediatrician who asked no questions and kept no records, provided medical care. Sister Mary Catherine, an Irish nun who ran an orphanage in Bangkok, served as coordinator for Catholic families. Abbot Thanasak from Wat Phra Monastery had created a program for older boys. Jim's most trusted ally turned out to be Captain Somchai Junchakul, a young Thai Army officer assigned as liaison to U-Tapao. Somchai had noticed irregularities but said nothing until one evening when he approached Jim. Colonel Harrison, Somchai had said quietly, my grandmother was Chinese. She came to Thailand as a refugee in 1949. If someone hadn't helped her, I wouldn't exist. From that day forward, Somchai became Jim's unofficial Thai coordinator, using his connections to smooth placements that might otherwise have been impossible. The operation required constant improvisation. Official supply flights would develop mechanical issues requiring unscheduled landings. Transport manifests would show medical supplies and food, but aircraft would land lighter than they took off. Base security logs would show routine personnel movements, not the quiet arrival of buses carrying frightened children. Not everything went smoothly. A surprise UN inspection nearly exposed the entire operation when Dr. Klaus Weber, a stern Swiss bureaucrat, announced an audit of supply distribution efficiency. Captain Chun performed what could only be described as bureaucratic magic. She produced manifests showing exact correlations between outgoing supplies and camp receipts. She provided photographs of supply distributions that had never happened. She created a paper trail, so convincing that Weber complimented the operation's efficiency. The closest call came when Master Sergeant Johnson, a by-the-book logistics officer, was transferred to U-Tapao and began asking uncomfortable questions about transport irregularities. Jim made a decision that could have ended his career. He told Johnson everything. He showed him the files, the photos, the letters from Thai families. He explained the placement process, the security measures, the careful vetting of recipients. Johnson studied the documentation in silence for 20 minutes. Finally, he looked up. "Sir, I see significant inefficiencies in your current manifest system. If you like, I could help streamline the process." From that day forward, Johnson became their most efficient coordinator. By 1985, the immediate refugee crisis had stabilized. Jim's operation had successfully placed 450 children with Thai families, institutions, and organizations. Some had been formally adopted. Others were being raised as extended family members. And still others were receiving education and training. Molly, the little girl with the wooden elephant, was adopted by Dr. Nareth and Mrs. Siraporn Chandara. They gave Molly not just safety and love, but education, opportunity, and a new identity as their son, Nareth Chandara. The boy with the prosthetic leg became Arjun Patel, a brilliant student who earned a scholarship to MIT and returned to Thailand as a civil engineer. The teenage girls at the school in Rayong excelled academically. One became a doctor, another a lawyer. A third started a nonprofit organization. Jim received updates regularly, a Christmas card from a Thai family, a graduation announcement, a wedding invitation. But he never realized the scope of what had been accomplished. In 1987, Jim retired from the Army and returned to Ohio. He'd been promoted to full colonel, received several commendations, and settled into quiet life as a defense contractor consultant. He never spoke about the children. The operation had been classified, participants sworn to secrecy, and Jim believed that chapter of his life was closed forever. He was wrong. In 2019, 32 years after his retirement, Jim received an unexpected phone call at his home in Columbus, Ohio. "Colonel Harrison, this is Dr. Nareth Chandara, Thailand's Minister of Health. I believe you knew me by a different name once." Jim's hand trembled as he held the phone. "Molly." "Yes, sir." Molly with wooden elephant. "I've been looking for you for 20 years. The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours. Nareth told Jim about his life, his education, his medical career, his family. But more importantly, he told Jim about the others. "Colonel, we've found each other. All of us. The children you saved are doctors, engineers, teachers, business owners, government officials. We've built lives, raised families, contributed to society. And we all remember the American colonel who gave us a chance at life. I was just doing my job," Jim said quietly. "No, sir. You were doing far more than your job. You were changing the world, one child at a time." Nareth explained that the children had been searching for their American rescuers for decades. Social media and improved record-keeping had finally allowed them to piece together the truth. "We want to honor you, sir. The Thai government declassified the refugee operations files last year. What you did is part of the historical record now. More importantly, it's part of our lives." Part 7. Returned to the ceremony back in the Bangkok Ceremonial Hall, General Juntical concluded, "For extraordinary humanitarian service, conducted with courage, compassion, and complete disregard for personal advancement, Colonel James Harrison exemplified the highest ideals of military service and human decency." Jim stood slowly as the general approached with the Royal Order of Humanitarian Merit, a gold medallion on a silk ribbon bearing the colors of the Thai flag. As the medallion was placed around his neck, Jim heard something unexpected. Not just applause, but voices calling out, "Thank you, Grandpa Jim. We love you, Colonel. You saved us." He looked out into the audience with tears streaming down his face. They were all there. Molly, now Dr. Nareth Chandara, 45 years old, successful, confident, alive. Arjun Patel, the boy with the prosthetic leg, now a renowned engineer. Dozens of faces, all older now, all successful, all alive because of decisions made in a warehouse 40 years ago. "I need to tell you something," Jim said, his voice carrying across the now silent hall. "For 40 years, I've carried the weight of those decisions. I've wondered if we did the right thing, if we broke too many rules, if we put too many people at risk. He paused, looking at the faces watching him. Today I have my answer. Jim stepped to the podium, his voice stronger now. In 1979, I was a lieutenant colonel with a logistics assignment and a conscience problem. Every day, I watched children disappear into a system that couldn't protect them. The hall was completely silent. What we did was not heroic. It was necessary. We didn't break rules because we were rebels. We broke rules because the rules were failing children. He looked directly at Dr. Chandara. Molly, when I first saw you at that border camp, you were holding a wooden elephant and you hadn't spoken in 3 days. You looked at me with eyes that had given up on adults, given up on safety, given up on tomorrow. Dr. Chandara wiped tears from his eyes, nodding. I want you to know that in that moment, you saved me as much as I saved you, because you reminded me why we wear the uniform, not to follow orders blindly, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Jim's voice grew stronger. For 6 years, a small team of American and Thai personnel operated a network that placed 450 Cambodian refugee children with Thai families and institutions. We did this without official authorization, without publicity, without expectation of recognition. He gestured toward the audience. Look at them now. Dr. Chandar has saved thousands of lives in his medical career. Engineer Patel has built infrastructure that serves millions. This is why we serve. Not for medals, not for recognition, but for moments like this. He removed the medallion from around his neck and held it up. This medal doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all the Thai families who opened their homes without asking questions. But most of all, it belongs to you, the children who became doctors and engineers and teachers and leaders. After the ceremony, Jim found himself surrounded by people whose names he'd never known, whose faces he remembered as children, whose lives had unfolded in ways he'd never imagined. "Colonel," said a woman in judicial robes, "I'm Judge Malay Thaxon. I was one of the teenage girls placed at the school in Rayong. You had a scar on your chin," Jim said suddenly. "You were terrified of flying." Judge Thaxon laughed, touching her chin where a faint scar was still visible. "You remembered after all these years." "I remember all of you," Jim said quietly. "Every face, every flight, every placement." "Colonel," Dr. Chandara said as the evening wound down, "there's something else we want you to know. We've established a foundation, the Harrison Foundation for Refugee Children. It operates across Southeast Asia." Jim's eyes widened. "You named it after me?" "We named it after a man who taught us that sometimes breaking the rules is the most moral thing you can do." Engineer Patel stepped forward. "In the past 20 years, the foundation has helped over 3,000 children. Your original 450 have become 3,450. That's the thing about throwing a stone into a pond," Judge Thaxon said gently. "You can't predict how far the ripples will spread." 6 months later, Jim received a package at his home in Ohio. Inside was a photo album titled "The Children of U-Tapao, Then and Now." Page after page showed before and after photos. Frightened children in 1980s refugee clothing, then successful adults in graduation gowns, wedding attire, military uniforms, medical coats, judicial robes. On the final page was a handwritten note. "Dear Colonel Harrison, every life you save has saved other lives. Every child you protected has protected other children. 450 children became 3,450 help children. Those 3,450 have become families, communities, institutions that will help thousands more. You threw a stone into a pond 40 years ago. The ripples are still spreading. With eternal gratitude, your children." Jim closed the album and placed it beside the wooden elephant that Dr. Chandar had given him at the ceremony, Molly's original toy, carefully preserved for 40 years. Outside his window, Ohio snow was falling gently. Inside his study, an old soldier sat quietly, finally understanding that some missions never end. They just transform into something larger than their creators ever imagined. The children of U-Tapao had become the guardians of thousands of other children. And somewhere in Thailand, children who had never heard of Colonel James Harrison were sleeping safely, because he had once decided that some orders come from the heart, not from headquarters. The ripples continued to spread.